Hey guys, it's Crystal here with Fertility Blooms, and guess what? I just did the most incredible interview that you're going to hear right away with Dr. Jodie Peacock. She is amazing. She's one of my favorite naturopaths out there. So here's the thing about Jodie. She has a booming practice, and I try to get clients in whenever I can because she just knows her stuff. Two, she's the founder of the Canadian Fertility Show, which is an amazing resource for anybody going through infertility. And she just has everything out there is available at that show. So I think she's going to have to take this international soon. And three, she's the author of Preconceived, a book that I used when I did my fertility certification. This is what I did my case study on. And the book is so easy to read. It's so much information in it, and it's practical things that you can change today to help with fertility. And four, enhanced fertility, which is the supplements that we talked about today on the show. So if you want more information on all those things, watch our interview. Stay tuned to the end because we have a special discount for you. Bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is Crystal with Fertility Blooms, and I'm a fertility coach. And welcome to Fertility Chats with me. And I have Dr. Jodie Peacock, who has been a friend for a long time now. She's helped me, and she's given me so much advice and support and guidance and just happiness through so many years. Welcome, Jodie.
Thank you so much for having me today, Crystal.
Can you tell us just a little bit about your background and why you specialize in fertility?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a naturopathic doctor. I've been in practice since 2006. And my kind of journey in, fertility really started as a personal journey because when I was at naturopathic medical school, I got diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. And at the time I was 23. The doctor had told me, don't wait to have kids because this can really make it hard for you to, to get pregnant, to maintain a pregnancy. And I was 23. Yeah. It's what? So first, after we got over that initial shock piece, I was like, okay, I'm not ready to have a family yet. I want to have one at some point, but that kind of got me triggered to say, okay, what can I do to protect my fertility, and how can I help my patients when I start in practice to say, okay, you know what, this doesn't mean you're never going to get pregnant. This doesn't mean, right? It just means, okay, we might have some work to do around hormonal balance and blood sugar regulation. And so, since being in practice and then seeing so many women and couples struggling, I founded the Canadian Fertility Show to help with more kind of public outreach and education than I'm able to do in kind of one-on-one practice. And then I'm also the Chief Medical Officer for Enhanced Fertility, which is a company that makes products to help support couples on their fertility journey.
Yeah, and you're an author. And I usually have your book on my desk because
yeah.
But I actually think I had it downstairs when I was working the other day. But you are an author and you have a really cool book because I use it all the time as a reference.
Yeah, so I wrote a book called Preconceived, basically just to help people walk through the wealth, because there's so much information, misinformation out on the internet. So basically it's kind of a guide that just walks people through step by step, what are some of the diet changes that they could make that might help their fertility? What, should we be doing from an exercise standpoint? How does stress impact? And each chapter is really short. They're very to the point. So I just find it's a helpful kind of starting place for people when they start thinking about, okay, I think I want to have a baby, or they're partly, maybe they've been trying for a while and things aren't happening as quickly as they thought they might. It's just a nice kind of reference guide to get them started.
And it's easy to digest, and it's action steps you can take right away. And I actually wrote my my paper when I got my fertility coaching certification. That's the book I did it on. So awesome. It's a special book to me. And like I said, I reference it all the time. So yeah, let's not leave that out. Yeah. And before we get started into everything, can we ask the Canadian Fertility Show? It's amazing. The first year was it the first year it was the ice storm?
Yes.
still a huge attendance and so needed. And then the second year was just like the energy and the vibe, and just everybody comes together, and the fertility community is so amazing. And then was it the third year we were locked down? Is that?
No, we had two in, yeah.
Okay,
So we
yes,
had
yeah,
person,
two.
and then
That's right.
this year was virtual.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, the show for me, I've met so many amazing people from there and have become such good friends. And like, I love the show because you see and can connect with so many fertility warriors and the lectures and stuff. And then this year it was online virtually, which was kind of cool. I was like, how is this going to work? As I'm sure you did, but it was, I think it was.
Well, we had to pivot for sure.
Yeah, but I think it was, my girls that attended, they loved it and they said it was great. So I don't know, we never talked about that yet. How did it go, and what are the steps for next year and moving forward?
Yeah, so we ended up having really great attendance to the virtual event. Obviously, it would be nice to see people in person.
Yeah.
But I think one of the huge advantages was we actually had people be able to attend from all across Canada. We had people attend from the US, where, you know, like we even had somebody from the Yukon attend.
Oh my gosh.
The chance of them coming to a Toronto show are pretty slim, right? So I think moving forward, we will have, I mean, for next year, I don't know, hopefully we will be able to go back in person, but also have some type of hybrid so that it is more accessible for people. We've also been doing kind of ongoing education this year. So we've had webinars every month on different topics. And all of those are accessible and they're all free. So if anybody is looking for kind of more in-depth education on a particular topic, if you go to the CanadianFertilityShow.ca, you can click through from there and you can see all the different webinars that are available.
Awesome. I thought they were on your Instagram, so I didn't know that. That's really good.
So we do have some videos on Instagram as well, but then all the like kind of interactive webinars are on the fertility show. Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to put that link below.
Excellent.
So people can just click right from this. If they're watching it, they can click right now and then get back to our chat.
Great.
Yeah, because I know there's a lot of good ones. So yeah, that's really good. Yeah. And the show, like it gives you so many topics and so many things you don't know about. And I always tell the girls, like, if they don't know and if they're just starting on their journey, the show is such a great environment because they can learn so much and get different perspectives from so many different people. So yeah.
Well, and I think one of the things that, you know, I find often happens with patients, especially when they've been referred to kind of one clinic, they just kind of go with whatever that one clinic has to say. Where, you know, sometimes when you go and talk to somebody at another clinic, you can find out, oh, there's other tests that might be available. Or, you know, sometimes you just need a second opinion, right? Just like you would with any other health condition. But then also opening up like what else impacts your fertility, right? And obviously you as a fertility coach, you help people with this, but for people who haven't connected with someone like that yet, you know, it's like, oh, I didn't know acupuncture might be able to help me. Oh, I didn't know that we could get an egg donor in Canada, right? Because there's different legality around that. Oh, how do I find a surrogate if I need that route, right? Like there is so many different pieces that, you know, you might need at some point. And at least then, you know, they exist and kind of where to reach out for those resources.
Well, honestly, you brought up a good point, because when they were telling me a long time ago that I may need an egg donor, they told me they asked, do you have a sister? I'm like, yes, she's older than me, so that won't help. And then they say, okay, well, you have to go to this place in the US. And you don't know what you don't know, right? So we didn't know, so we trekked over there, and now I know. So it's very eyes wide open, right? Like it teaches you all the different options that you have available. So yeah, I love the show. But today we're actually going to talk about supplements, maybe supplements 101, because supplements are not created equal. And anybody that's worked with me or been to the support group or coached with me or in our private group knows I always am like harping on supplements, because I've seen the difference they can make in 3 months, even. Huge, huge difference. And Jodie's supplements are by far superior, only because, this is my thoughts, I've seen them change my own husband's sperm quality from here to here. So I have like proof that they work firsthand, and I've seen it help so many of my people that I work with. So I guess, Jodie, the first question is, why are supplements, like if I have bottle X and bottle Y here, and they all have the same ingredients, why are they not the same?
Well, I think there's a few things that are kind of important to be aware of. So in Canada, we do have a system where you have to apply for what's called a natural health product number. So to be able to sell supplements in Canada, you have to have at least gone through that initial process. You've put in an application so that basically the government says, you know, the amount that's in here is safe. There's nothing in here that basically should harm you. But then kind of the next step beyond that is when you're looking at the individual nutrients, you know, what form are they in? Are the nutrients, you know, like not all calcium is the same, right? You can have calcium carbonate, you can have calcium citrate, you can have, you know, an MCHC form. So different forms that nutrients will come in will absorb differently. So that's a really important thing to be aware of.
Right.
And, you know, just because somebody says they take iron, for example, like iron is a big one when it comes to fertility and pregnancy. Often we'll see patients that are low in iron. Yeah. And so we want to make sure we're using a form that's going to best increase their stores. And, you know, different forms of iron, you can see, you know, an absorbability anywhere from 8% to 90% absorbable. Wow. So looking at,
they can have, say, both have iron, and it says iron, but one could be 8%, one could be 90%.
Yeah. So the next thing you want to look at is what's the form. Is it an iron gluconate? Is it an iron, you know, glycinate? Wow. Like what form is it in? So that's a really important piece. And I mean, not always, but often the brands that tend to be less expensive will often use forms that aren't as easily absorbed because they're cheaper to purchase. So that's an important thing to look at. Then another piece that I think is critically important is, does the company that's manufacturing the supplements actually test the raw materials? So this is, you know, something that not all companies will do, but, you know, like with some companies, when the raw material arrives at the manufacturing facility, it comes with what's called a certificate of analysis from kind of the raw material supplier. So it'll say, okay, yep, it's, you know, 50 grams of magnesium. But then, you know, the next step with that is, okay, you can either take that at face value and say, okay, it says it's 50 milligrams of magnesium, let's go ahead and use it. Or you can send it to a lab and say, can you analyze this and tell me what it is? Okay. And when that analysis comes back, yep, it is 50 milligrams of magnesium. Great. The other thing that we're going to look at is what else is in there. So there's basically kind of three things that we want to look at. Purity. So is it just what it says it is? Like, is it just magnesium? Potency. Yeah. Is it the actual dose that we're looking for? And identity. So those are so we want to look at then also, are there any contaminants, right? Like sometimes certain regions might have more lead in the soil or might have more mercury. We might see fungal things. We might see bacteria. Like, so it's really important that that testing happens. And that, you know, a company can stand behind their product and say, yeah, we tested it and we know it doesn't have any of these things in it, and it does have in it what it says. Because there have been studies that have been done over the years where they've just pulled random supplements off the shelves, tested them, and, you know, it says there's 100 milligrams of vitamin C, and when they test it, there's 10 milligrams. Wow. So it doesn't actually have in it what it says. And I think the big risk that you run when you're trying to get pregnant, I mean, we're trying to minimize, you know, different toxins and things like that. If you're getting it in your supplements, it's really scary, right? Because you're trying to do a good, positive thing for yourself, for your future baby. And we want to just make sure that that process is in place. So if they're a company that, you know, will, you know, you can call them, you can ask them, or you can email them and say, you know, do you have a certificate of analysis that shows, you know, what's in this product, and they can provide that? Great. That's a really great sign that they're doing their due diligence. If the company says, no, what are you talking about? That might not be a company that you want to work with, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's an important thing. And unfortunately, the testing does cost money. So when you look at sometimes the price point on different products, you have to kind of keep that in mind, right? If a company is using an inferior, not absorbed form of a nutrient and they don't test it, sure, they can sell it for a pretty low cost. But is that going to get you the benefit that you're looking for as an individual?
So I just want to be clear. If I order magnesium for my company, and Shelly, I can't think of the name, Shelly orders magnesium for her company. If I test mine and she doesn't test hers, but she can still put that it's magnesium because
she's got that certificate from, absolutely. She just hasn't double checked it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, where we see, like from a manufacturing side of things, we see a lot of raw materials fail testing. And we know they're getting sent somewhere, like someone's using it. So we know it's on the market. But yeah, it's shocking. Like, I've been kind of in the supplement side of the industry for about 15 years, and it's shocking how many things will fail. And even for companies that say they do the testing, it's like, well, did you test this lot, right? Did you test this raw material? Because sometimes they'll say, well, we always get our B vitamins from the same manufacturer, so we just, it's always been fine. But, you know, especially over this last year and a half, with raw material being a lot more difficult to ship and to receive, you know, a lot of people have seen things go on back order because, you know, raw materials have been an issue. It's like, well, do we just skirt that issue and use something that isn't quite the same as what we normally would, right? And so it's important to kind of just take that little bit of extra time and not take things at face value always, unfortunately.
I'm going to share a quick little story. I have, as many people know, I have Bloomis, which is a clean, natural line of skincare and beauty products and stuff. And this is probably about 4 years ago. There was a warehouse in Mississauga that they would take all my stuff on the shelves, and they would ship it out for me. So kind of like a distribution center. So I'm in there and I'm talking with the guy, and then he's like, oh, what else do you sell or whatever? And I was like, this is it. And I was looking, and he had all the other like different companies of everything there. And he's like, oh, you know where you can make a lot of money? And I go, where? Because everybody wants to make money, right? And he's like, here, sell these. They're not Jodie's vitamins, but he gave me a bottle of supplements, and he's like, this will cost you $3. Put your Bloomis label on it, and you can sell it for like $80, $90. And I'm like, what is it? And he's like, it's like a multivitamin, or forget what it was. And he's like, oh my God, it's all the rage. People, we ship so much. And he's like, we have like 6 companies. They're all the same ones that we sell them for $3. We get them from the US. And they're all like selling them in the range like from $50 to like $90, which is different labels on Amazon and whatever. And I've always been cautious of what I put in my body and like vitamins and foods and things like that. And I was like, but what's in there? Like, how do you know? Like, how did they get it so cheap?
Yeah.
Even for me, the bottle and the label should be $3. And he's like, oh no, everything. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm like, this is actually really scary. And I was just, so that thought alone should like freak anybody out, because those are obviously not tested. But this guy was telling me how much they were shipping every week, and people were buying it, and it's all marketing. And anybody that knows me, I love marketing. That was my background, marketing. But that scares me. So yeah, that's why it's so important. Yeah, for sure. And now Enhance, let's talk about Enhance, because I love them. And we'll talk about the first one that I have on my desk is I don't know if you can see this.
The Sperm Health. Yeah.
But I just want to go over just what ingredients and what, like, because people say, is this actually going to help my husband's sperm? Or is that actually going to help me? Or is it just like marketing or just whatever, right? And so let's talk about the sperm health, because I know my husband's sperm, they didn't know what I did. And I put him on a strict diet and I did all these things with him, some weird things that like, yeah, but it changed dramatically. Like it changed from, they weren't sure if they could use his sperm to who is this? Like what happened? And it was less than 3 months. So
That's amazing.
and I was like, well, it's a supplement. And yeah, he was eating a lot of walnuts.
So definitely, I mean, when we're talking about sperm health, we need kind of a certain level of nutrition to be able to produce healthy sperm, right? And the nice thing with sperm compared to egg is we can easily collect a sample of sperm and test it, right? So that's a really kind of, it's a lot easier almost to work with men when we're talking about fertility than women, because there's not quite as much going on. And because the sperm are constantly being regenerated, right? So from when a sperm first starts to develop till it ejaculates, we're at about 3 months. So typically when we talk about making changes to sperm health, we're looking at kind of that window. But there was one study that looked at just using acetyl L-carnitine. So carnitine is an amino acid. And what it does is it helps to move fatty acids into mitochondria. So mitochondria, for those of you who don't remember grade 10 science, those are those little organelles in all of our cells that create energy. And so when it comes to sperm health, having the mitochondria make energy is really important for having the sperm be able to swim, right? If we don't have enough energy, we got slow movers. We've got guys that might start going in. So carnitine is really important for motility predominantly. And so there was one trial where they only put men on carnitine for 2 weeks. So they started at the beginning of their partner's, like kind of on day 1 of their partner's menstrual cycle. They took it until they did retrieval. So it was literally like 2 weeks. And even in that time, they significant improvement in motility. So they are, they're definitely like everything that's in that product, each of the ingredients in there has research showing it impacts kind of one of the 3 big things that we look at with sperm. So when we look at kind of a sperm analysis, we're looking at count. So how many sperm are in there. We know that counts over the last several decades just keep dropping. So we keep dropping our reference range because they're dropping, right? Like an average sperm count 20 years ago was 70 million. Now we say if you have 15, we're like, you're good to go. I'm like, no. So
yeah, that's a big
so
difference.
this I think is an important piece, is that like our benchmarks just keep dropping, and it doesn't mean that it's a good thing, right? It just means I think our population, because of toxicity, because of like we are becoming less healthy as a species overall. And the health of your sperm, like obviously when we're talking about fertility, we're like, okay, we need it good right now, but the health of a man's sperm is a big indicator of their internal health. Right. So when we see someone with poor sperm parameters, we know likely they're going to be someone that's going to develop a chronic disease. Like it definitely is tied to their overall health. So anything we can do to kind of help improve that sperm parameter obviously helps us from a pregnancy standpoint to be able to conceive, but it's going to help that person be healthier and be around for that kid.
They need to be a healthy dad.
Right? Like that's an important piece. So the diet is really important. And as much as I think supplements play an important role, you cannot supplement yourself out of a bad diet. Like I do really believe that. So we need to make those changes. We need to look at those lifestyle pieces. So if you're a smoker, if you are a heavy drinker, if you're using, recreational drugs like marijuana, even some pharmaceutical drugs, like there are so many things that can impact that sperm health that, need to go alongside of taking a supplement, right? But yeah, so the sperm count, then we look at the motility. So motility has kind of 2 parts. One, are the sperm moving at all? And are they swimming forward? So if it's swimming in circles, it's not going to get anywhere, right? So that's an important piece that you're going to kind of look at and see. And then we look at something called morphology. So morphology is, what does the sperm look like? Does it have a head and a tail and a body in the middle? Does it look like a normal sperm? And with our current kind of sperm analysis, the clinics will tell you as long as 4% look normal, you're probably okay. Like so 96 out of 100 look
like really
two-headed, split tail, like we're good, right? So now we know we only need one sperm. So if you've got millions, but I think we can do a lot better than that. And those kind of parameters are things that we can monitor, again, fairly easily with repeated, sperm analysis to see, okay, is what we're doing improving it? And yes, I mean, diet, for sure, we can see changes. We reduce inflammation. We get rid of, one of the things that I do see fairly often is this toxicity piece. So whether it's because, and something that I find is quite interesting is with our food choices, whether we're choosing organic or not. So there's a list called the Dirty Dozen, which is kind of the 12 fruits and vegetables that have the highest toxicity from insecticides, pesticides. I have had patients in the past where when they first made diet changes, they started eating a ton more vegetables, which is great.
But they ate the dirty
They were eating, and then we actually saw their sperm get worse.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like juicing celery and spinach and, things that are on that list that you would normally think is amazing, but then you're putting in this high amount of toxicity, which we know impacts sperm. So, making good food choices, but then also being a little bit selective about where those foods
where you're getting it
from.
Absolutely. And
so when we kind of look at some of those nutrients, like CoQ10 is one that has probably the largest amount of clinical trials when it comes to sperm health, and it can impact all three of those parameters. So we see it help counts, motility, and morphology. So, any kind of sperm formulation will typically have CoQ10 in it because it has such a good effect. Then obviously we look at something like the carnitine, that's going to help with that motility piece and that energy production. So that's going to be important for replication and stuff as well. We also want to make sure there aren't nutrient deficiencies. So when we look at like B12, folate, zinc, selenium, we know all those nutrients, vitamin C, are really important just to be able to actually make healthy sperm. So in some formulations, you will see, a combination of, most of those nutrients in there because they're really important for that overall health. And then we can often see either things like N-acetylcysteine or NAC. This is an amino acid that does have, again, some research in supporting sperm health. And the nice thing kind of about this is most of these nutrients that we're talking about also have research when it comes to egg quality as well. So sometimes you'll see, a sperm and an egg formula, and they're both, they have very similar ingredients. From a male standpoint, there's a bit more research in terms of amino acids. So like the carnitine, arginine can also be helpful more from, helping with blood flow standpoint. So that might be something kind of as a standalone that some men might look at. But basically we need to get kind of good antioxidant potential, good amino acids in there so that we can create healthy sperm.
I was going to say a lot of the girls probably recognize the CoQ10 because that seems to go hand in hand with the egg health and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, well, let's mention the egg health then, because I always like those two go hand in hand also, I guess.
Absolutely.
So the egg health, we know CoQ10.
So when it comes to egg quality, it is a little bit harder to kind of assess egg quality than it is for sperm. So until, a woman goes and actually does an IVF retrieval and we take the eggs out and can look at them under a microscope, we don't really know what egg quality is like. Now we can make some kind of inferences, like we know kind of after age 35, we start to see some diminishment in quality. Women are born with all the eggs that we're going to have. So just like all the other cells in our body, we see some aging starting to happen. Now, that does not mean though that you're not going to get pregnant or you can't conceive just because you're over 35, right? What it tells us is, you know, the kind of the chance each month of conception is a little bit lower as we get older, but we only need one good quality egg for a pregnancy to happen, right?
I'm just gonna add, Jodie, people, I tell this in my group all the time, but you are the one doctor, because when I was like freaking out going, oh my God, is this even possible? Because the medical doctors and the REs gave me no hope. And you're like, Crystal, it only takes one good egg. And Jodie's like the doctor I always mention, if anybody doesn't know, because you gave me that hope. And I like pass that advice on to everybody I talk to. And I'm like, Dr. Jodie says it only takes one good egg. We just got to get them there.
Well, we got to get it there, right? And I think the thing that can make it frustrating is there is no good test to look at it, right? No. So we have AMH, which is a blood level that it tells you more about reserve. So it will tell you it obviously will diminish as we get older. Yeah. We see it's very high in women that have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Like that will be kind of one of the criteria sometimes doctors will look at. Yeah. But AMH doesn't tell you anything about egg quality. And originally it was just used to say, is this person going to be a good candidate for IVF? Because if their AMH is very low, they will likely only retrieve a few follicles. And, you know, when IVF, I mean, it's come a long way over the years. It, you know, originally was very much a numbers game, right? So if we were able to retrieve 10 eggs, then the chance of us having one that survived is higher than if we only retrieved 3 eggs. Yeah. Right. So it was more used as are you going to be, not, are you ever going to get pregnant? So, you know, when someone comes into my office or we have a consult and the person's, you know, devastated because their AMH is low, I'm like, like, honestly, I don't even really care about your AMH level. Exactly. I mean, if it's at 0 and you're not ovulating, that's a different conversation. Yeah. But as long as, you know, we are seeing, you know, an ovulatory cycle, AMH doesn't tell me anything about your egg quality. So I just like to kind of get that out of the conversation. And yes, I mean, we're born with the eggs that we have, but they stay in basically what's called a primordial state until they start to develop. And from when they start developing until that egg ovulates, it's also about 3 months. So similar to that sperm side of things. So what we can do to help during that egg development stage is basically make the fluid or the follicular fluid that surrounds that egg as nutrient dense and protective as we possibly can. So when an egg's developing, things that will impact the egg quality will be if there's too much oxidative damage happening because we don't have enough antioxidants to protect the egg, we're going to get more damage. So this is where, you know, CoQ10 concentrates in the follicular fluid. We will also see things like NAC, alpha lipoic acid, like these can, and then your kind of more basic antioxidants, your vitamin C, your vitamin E, those are all going to play a protective role from that perspective. So one of the things we want to do is basically kind of protect that egg from damage. Then we also want to optimize that mitochondrial function. So when the egg and sperm meet, the mitochondria, and again, those guys that make the energy that's really important for replication, they all come from mom's egg. So the sperm only needs it to get there. Once the sperm gets there, mitochondria from dad are not a thing. Mitochondria from mom, though, if they don't have enough energy when replication is happening, this is when we can see, you know, basically mistakes happen in that DNA replication. So we can see those chromosomal abnormalities happening. We can see, so, you know, sometimes it'll just mean that embryo doesn't develop in a healthy enough state. So we just have a very early miscarriage, or it can be a reason why, you know, we lose a pregnancy because that DNA replication didn't happen properly. And if we don't have the energy to do that, that's going to be an important piece. Yeah, for sure. That's where, you know, that CoQ10 and carnitine work so well together, because carnitine basically opens up the mitochondria so that the CoQ10 can get in there, so it can make the energy.
Okay,
So
that
those
makes so much
two
sense.
need to work together for the most part. So oftentimes I'll see clinics prescribe, high amounts of CoQ10 with no carnitine. And, if that person is lower in carnitine or they don't have that capacity, that extra CoQ10 isn't doing anything for them.
Okay.
So
That makes
that's
so much
why
sense.
you'll see in some formulas, they put them together so that
Yeah.
that happens properly.
Oh,
And then
that was
also,
really easy to understand. Thank you. Because I think that's, yeah, for sure.
and then we also, again, want to look at those nutrients, right? So if we are deficient in folate, now, and folate is a big conversation on its own, but folic acid is a synthetic version of folate. And, some people are fine with using folic acid, but somewhere between 20-25% of the population has a significant reduction in their ability to convert synthetic folic acid into its active form, 5-MTHFR or 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. Well, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
But that active form is what's really important, again, for that DNA to replicate properly. So we've heard, okay, we need enough folic acid so we don't have spinal issues, so we don't see these different defects. If you're someone that can't convert folic acid, which is in your prenatal vitamin, in our fortified foods, then you're still going to be someone who's at risk of, having either, birth defects or losing a pregnancy. And so that's an important piece. So, when you're looking at, whatever your prenatal or, your support is, if somebody doesn't know their genetic status, I always err on the side of caution and say, just take one that has active folate in it, so we don't have to worry about it. So that's where you would see that 5-MTHFR form, so that we can kind of take that out of the equation. But some of the things that would lead you to think you might have that defect, definitely, a lot of patients that I see that have low mood, so mild to moderate depression concerns, often they're patients that do have a concern with that conversion piece. We also will see, again, somebody who is having trouble conceiving, having recurrent miscarriage. This is something that I will screen for with those patients to see,
and they
because
can screen that with you. Okay.
Well, so they can basically, there's tests where you can check your MTHFR status. So there are lots of different basically functional genetic tests on the market. There's DNA labs in Canada. There's 23andMe, most people have heard of in the US. So those are kits that patients are able to order on their own and check it. But obviously it's good to kind of, if you've got those results, to run through it with someone who knows a little bit more in depth what those different results mean.
Yeah, because I think that's important. I have a girl I'm working with that has both genes of the MTHR, and she had 5 miscarriages and nobody checked her. And I was like, what's going on? So finally she asked. I'm like, you need to ask. This doesn't make sense to me. And first her doctor dismissed her, and then they checked and she has both genes. It's so frustrating. So ask, whenever in doubt, just ask or check her. That's why I love doing these things, because at least we can.
And I think if you do know you have this SNP at the MTHFR for conversion, you need to make sure that your whatever prenatal you're taking has that active form. But the other piece that's important that I find often nobody talks about is you also need to be wary of fortified foods. So in North America, all of our grains that are kind of commercially milled are fortified with synthetic folic acid. And so for someone who has that SNP, if you're getting in a lot of synthetic folic acid, it can still even block, even though you're taking some supplementals. So this is where, looking at, again, is it fortified? Is it not? Are we so I think for some women, you'll hear a lot of women do better when they go off gluten, for example, but all of those grains that gluten is in are also fortified. So I think for some women, yes, gluten, is inflammatory and is a concern for them. But I think for some of the women, it's just getting them off of all that synthetic folic acid that now has kind of unblocked this methylation pathway for them. So that's an important thing to also consider and look at.
For sure. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's, for sure. And okay, so hormonal health or hormonal balance. What's the, hormonal balance?
So this is a formula that has something called chaste tree in it. Chaste tree is a great herb for basically supporting your endogenous or your natural production of progesterone. So it does work starting at the beginning of the cycle. So it's not something you would only take kind of after you ovulate till the end. You take it because it does impact both your LH and FSH secretion. But where I find, chaste tree can be really helpful is for women who have an irregular menstrual cycle. If they have a short menstrual cycle, and we know it's short because luteal phase, so kind of from when they ovulate till their period is less than 8 days, we know, that's going to be a problem for implantation to happen. And like, who wants to have a period every 3 weeks, right? So, I mean, outside of fertility, like that is an important, or for women that are having, significant kind of PMS symptoms. So, I'll have some patients come in, they're like, feel like a different person in the first 2 weeks of my cycle compared to the second 2 weeks of my cycle, right? They're more emotional. They find, they're angered easily. They're crying easily. They may have more physical symptoms like different food cravings. They're not sleeping well. All these things could indicate they're not getting enough progesterone. Now, if you're, at a fertility clinic and you're using progesterone suppositories for that second half of your cycle, you may not need kind of chaste tree on top of that. But if you're kind of in between cycles, or, you're still having concerns even with that, this can be something that's helpful. Then there's also some ginkgo in there and B6. So B6 is an important B vitamin for being able to make our hormones. It actually plays a role in the synthesis. And then ginkgo can be really helpful for just encouraging more blood flow to the uterus. So this is it's something that we can kind of look at when somebody's having a thin lining, or we're seeing kind of any concerns that way.
Okay, that's important. And then we have the PCOS one. And I know I work with a ton of PCOS girls. And I have one question because I just don't want to forget it at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you have PCOS, you can answer it after. Just don't let me forget.
Yeah.
If you have PCOS, like for you, if you have had all your children, do you have to continue taking the PCOS supplements?
I take it myself. So like I'm not planning on having any more children, but I use it because if I don't, I see huge differences. So with inositol, so myo-inositol is a nutrient that has a lot of research in PCOS. It is like an absolutely amazing nutrient. So the way that it works is by sensitizing your hormone receptors. It also sensitizes neurotransmitter receptors. So, from a PCOS standpoint, how that's going to be helpful, it's going to sensitize insulin receptors. So if you're someone who has, like there's basically kind of two different types of PCOS. There's the patients that more have a concern with that blood sugar regulation. This is where we will typically see more of the concern around kind of weight gain. For sure. You typically see more hirsutism, more acne, those kind of symptoms. And so with being able to have insulin bind more effectively, basically we can get sugars out of the bloodstream more easily without having to secrete more. But we also will see it help with your estrogen binding, your testosterone, your DHEA. So it basically can help regulate all of those different hormones that can be out of whack when we have that PCOS diagnosis. So because PCOS is a syndrome, what that means is that basically it's just based on, these are the symptoms you have. You've got a few, you probably have elevated testosterone on your blood work. we might be seeing that cystic activity on the ovaries when we do that transvaginal ultrasound. But you don't necessarily have to have all those pieces, right? So sometimes we have that, sometimes we don't. So if, you know, and I think the other thing that's important to note is, you know, PCOS is obviously something that is more on the radar of doctors now. It does go undiagnosed often until somebody is trying to conceive. That's when it'll show up. But it also is not always necessarily a bad thing if you have it kind of controlled through diet and exercise. Because, you know, a lot of our elite female athletes, they all have PCOS, right? Because that higher testosterone confers a competitive advantage to them.
I heard that too. And
and so oftentimes when we'll see it show up, right, is, you know, someone's been very athletic throughout their teens into their 20s, and perhaps when they finish university, they stop training. Then all these symptoms start to show up because the exercise piece drops down.
Balancing.
Like, I know that was a big thing for me, right? Like, I played competitive soccer, like I never knew I had it. And then I got to medical school, like naturopathic medical school, and I obviously wasn't training at that same level. And then these symptoms started, and I was like, what's going on? Like, and that's kind of a trajectory that, you know, I do see with a lot of, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means we have some tools that we need to put in place to keep things regulated. And exercise is a huge component of that. Where, you know, for me, as soon as, you know, it drops for me, then I'll see my cycle shortens and it gets heavier. Like, it's a very direct cause and effect. Now, not everyone is that direct with it, but I find for me too, like when I drop the inositol out, the sugar cravings go through the roof. So if you're someone, you know, with PCOS, the other kind of gene that we've often seen now associated with it is this gene called FTO. And so FTO, basically one of the things that it does is it controls your leptin and ghrelin. So these are the two hormones that kind of tell you when you're hungry and tell you when you're full. And they don't work properly in a lot of PCOS patients. So when you have that kind of disadvantage, we'll call it, it can be very easy to basically, and it's especially predominant around carbohydrates. So these will be the women, and I'm included in this, that'll be like, I'm going to have one cookie. And then it's like, no, I'm going to have 3 cookies. No, I'm going to eat the whole bag of cookies. And like, you don't get that same message. And I can remember even, you know, as a teen going out with girlfriends being like, that's all you're just going to eat that one thing. Like, I could eat that whole cake. Right?
I'm pretty sure I've not been diagnosed with PCOS, but I may have that thing is really messed up for me because I have.
And so this is where like inositol can be really helpful at supporting someone with that. So even on days where I don't have it, I'm like, oh, why am I craving? And I was like, oh, I haven't had my inositol yet. And it, like, for me, it's very direct. And so the other piece of that is intermittent fasting for a lot of women with PCOS will work really well, because as soon as you get to that kind of 12 hours fasted, that also helps that leptin ghrelin piece.
And it's okay when they're going through fertility to do the intermittent fasting, because I know
absolutely, as long as you're getting your nutrients in during the time that you're eating. No, I wouldn't do like 24-hour fast. Like typically, you know, I would say like a 16 and 8. So, you know, you're eating between, you know, 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. or 10 and 6, you know, so you're still getting 2 good meals, a snack in between, but then you're shutting it down. So then it gives your body a chance to get the insulin levels down, which is going to get the inflammation down, which is going to make getting pregnant easier. So inositol also plays a role in implantation, and it concentrates in the follicular fluid. So it has a really important role from egg quality standpoint. So it hits so many positive buttons. And, you know, in terms of that sensitizing with receptors, it also helps sensitize neurotransmitter receptors. So it's something I will also use, you know, if I have a patient come in that is struggling with depression and they're on an antidepressant, you know, and their doctor's talking about increasing their dosing for example, we get inositol and it actually makes the receptors work better so that their antidepressant is more effective. It actually works better for them. There's research using it for anxiety as well. And I mean, a lot of times, unfortunately, fertility and low mood and anxiety go hand in hand with each other, right? So, you know, having something that kind of is like, okay, it helps my egg quality, it helps my anxiety, it helps my blood sugars, I don't crave sugar as much, like, it can be a really, really helpful piece for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. And quick question just on PCOS in general. What do you suggest for like workouts? Because there's people that say, don't do HIIT, don't do hardcore this, do whatever. There's so much like yes and no's for PCOS girls, and they just don't know where to turn. What do you suggest?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it is very individual based on the person. I don't think there's a blanket, you have PCOS, so this is how you should exercise. So first of all, so I would just like to get that off of the table. Now, if you're, so the other kind of side of PCOS that we didn't talk about so far is there, you know, some of the patients are more adrenal PCOS patients. So basically they're kind of that more stress burnout, their adrenal gland is not working optimally. So for them, when they exercise, and this doesn't necessarily just have to be in PCOS patients, but if after you have kind of exercised, you feel exhausted and you need to go and nap, that exercise is not good for you, right?
Okay, that's a good.
So what kind of a good rule of thumb to look at is like when you finish your exercise, I mean, you can have muscle soreness, obviously, if you know you haven't done something for a while, but you should feel better after you exercise than you did going into that exercise, right? So if you go and do a HIIT class and you feel great afterwards and you feel good the rest of the day and you sleep well, that's a good exercise for you, right? If you feel like you can barely function for the rest of the day and you're dragging yourself through, that's not a good exercise for you at that time, right? And sometimes I have patients come in and I do see this a lot in the PCOS population because, again, often they were, you know, good high-level athletes earlier in their lives. They've gotten to this point where, you know, now they've gained weight, they don't feel good about it, and they're like exercising like crazy, right? They're like, I'm doing 2 hours a day and I'm eating nothing and I'm still gaining weight, right? And you're like, okay, this person is like, they have overstressed that adrenal system so much that any exercise that they're doing like that is now producing more cortisol and stress in their system. So some patients, I have to say, no, you need to stop that for the next kind of 8 weeks while we reset this adrenal system. You can, you know, we'll get them doing more yoga, more calming, like doing, you know, kind of, we can do walking, we like other stuff. And initially they may be like, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, I know, but like your body is not handling what you're doing to it right now.
Yeah. Right? I know. So, I get told that too. Don't tell me I have to just walk and do yoga.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that that's a forever. Right? That does not mean that's a forever, but I'm like, if your adrenals are so fried, you're not functioning well, we need to take the stresses off, right? And if you're contributing to that by doing, you know, marathon training or really high, you know, high intensity stuff that your body isn't recovering from, that's a sign to me that it's just like, that's not good for you right now.
Yeah.
Right. And once we get you better, then yes, we'll get you back to those exercises at some point, right? But not right now. But where other people, you know, doing a HIIT class 2 or 3 times a week is great for them, right? Going to a spin, you know, whatever exercise they like to do is great, right? And I think the other important thing is what makes you happy, right? Like, if you hate being in a gym, I'm not going to be like, go to a gym 4 times a week, because what's the point? Right? Like, we got to find something that gets you excited. And it could be as simple as like, you put on music that you like and you dance in your living room, right? Like, it doesn't have to be an organized, weight-based course, right?
Yeah. And I love the thing, how you said, if you feel tired or exhausted or not good the rest of the day after you do some kind of exercise, then it's not for you. If you feel good, have energy after, and keep going. That's like, I think really important, because I think we ignore our bodies, because I think we're programmed to think, yeah, if
this
I
is what
go
I'm
to
supposed to
or I
do.
do this, yeah, like I'm supposed to do that, right? So yeah. And the last two supplements, women's and men's, is that how it's called? Women's and men's essentials.
Yeah,
Now,
so basically, I mean, the kind of the purpose behind these is again to prevent those nutrient deficiencies, right? So if we're wanting to go into a pregnancy, we want both partners to be kind of optimal health going into that, right? So making sure we don't have any specific nutrient deficiencies, that's where kind of a multivitamin approach is going to be helpful. Again, we still need to be cognizant of our diet, making sure that we're eating well also, but these are going to be kind of nutrients that are in the most absorbable forms, in the right doses, so that you know, we're making sure that, you know, sometimes you'll look at supplements and they have like a great ingredient list, but then you look at the dosing and it's like, well, there's 2 milligrams. I'm like, okay, that's not really going to be very helpful for this you know, particular nutrients. So depends what kind of nutrients that we're looking to optimize, what we need for that individual person. But these are kind of a safe, like, okay, this is a starting place, making sure we're getting kind of those good, highly absorbed nutrients in. And then if we need something beyond that, because there's this specific identified health concern like PCOS or endometriosis, sperm health, or, you know, whatever else is going on, then we can address that as well.
Yeah. But, and like, I like how you said, like, it can't substitute, you can't supplement yourself to that. You have to include diet and exercise and like the whole everything, right? Yeah, for sure. And so those are the 6 supplements you offer.
Yep.
And is there any other ones that you have coming out yet, or is this
yeah, we will be coming out with a fish oil supplement. Our omega-3s are really important. So omega-3s play a role when it comes to like sperm health. They play an important piece. They help reduce inflammation. They also play an important role in uterine lining as well. So, and we know during pregnancy we need omega-3s for, you know, baby's brain development. We need it for placental development. So yeah, your omega-3s are an important piece. And that's also a really important nutrient that you want to make sure has been tested. Because in kind of the fatty parts of the fish, like just as in humans, like in our fat is where a lot of these toxins can accumulate. So if the oils that have been kind of extracted from the fish have not been basically cleaned, we can see, you know, lead, we can see mercury, we can see PCBs, we can see dioxins. Like there can be a lot of toxins that accumulate in fish. So that is definitely one that, you know, whatever, you know, company you're purchasing your supplements from, you need to make sure your fish oils have been tested.
For sure.
Vitamin D is another one. So we know, you know, vitamin D deficiency, you know, does impact our ability to conceive. We see, you know, in places of northern latitude like Canada, pregnancy rates are significantly higher in the summer and the fall than they are in the winter and the spring, right? And we know vitamin D levels go up and down dependently, right?
And so this is when I will look at everything, and obviously I'm just a coach, so I just kind of go with all the different things that they have told me. And I'll say, get your vitamin D checked, and in a few months they fall pregnant. I've had this happen like maybe 6 or a dozen times now, and it was something so silly. And the clinics don't run a vitamin D test, and often you have to pay for it with OHIP. So it's one that I don't know why it just should be all the time, but it's such an important one, because
it is
crazy things happen.
Yeah. Well, and OHIP doesn't cover it because they basically have gone on the assumption that everybody in Canada is going to be deficient. So just supplement. But my issue with that approach is the amount that somebody needs to supplement varies so much from person to person, right? Like the World Health Organization recommendation is 2,000 IUs per day for an adult. And for some people, that's great. That works. That puts them in a sufficient range. But I have some patients that, they're taking 8,000 IUs a day and they're still not at a good range, right? So this is one that I really encourage people to pay the $35. Get the lab tested.
Not much.
And then after you've been supplementing for a few months, test it again.
Okay. So do you recommend like 2 or 3 months? Or?
Yeah. So that we make sure that it then is in good range for them. So, if you test it now in the summertime and you're somebody that is outside with sun exposure and you're in good range, that can kind of tell you, okay, you probably don't need to supplement in the summertime. If you're low in the summer, we know you're going to be that much lower in the winter, right? So, it's not a bad thing to test it in this. Sometimes people will say, well, it's the summer, mine should be fine, right? And it's like, okay, well, it might be, but it might not. So let's just take a look and see where it's at so we know kind of going forward for them.
Exactly. And then I think I have 2 more questions for you, Jodie. One is, okay, some supplements, and I think a lot of yours are like this. You tell us to take them 3 times a day. And then others, because I'll have the girls tell me, can't I take this supplement? Because it's so much easier. I can take it whenever I want and once a day. But Jodie's have to take with food and I have to take 3 times a day and da, 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 da. And what do you have to say to that one? Because I know this.
So, I mean, definitely there are kind of 1-a-day multis on the market. I think the big thing that you need to kind of look at around that is, okay, what dose are you getting? A lot of those ones you're really getting very limited or low amounts of nutrients, and is it actually going to make a difference? So is there a purpose in even taking that nutrient? If you're not going to break it down, it's such a low amount. I mean, in terms of kind of recommendation of with food, typically anything that has B vitamins in it, so any of your multis, the recommendation will be taken with food, because for some people, B vitamins on an empty stomach can make them feel nauseous. So if you try your supplement on an empty stomach and you feel fine, it doesn't happen for everyone. So then you're probably someone that's fine with it. But typically kind of those recommendations are made more to kind of avoid any negative kind of side effects from.
But for me, I forget and I put like
so the 3 times a day dosing can be tricky. So oftentimes you can do 2 and 1. Like if you do 2 with breakfast, 1 with dinner. If you take all 3 together, again, like because they are so nutrient packed, some people might not feel that great taking them all at the same time. So then separating them can be a little bit easier.
Okay. Yeah. I knew there was a reason. Yeah. And with food is just to help you feel like it doesn't upset your stomach and stuff. Yeah. Especially for me, I know that iron can upset my stomach.
Iron can. Zinc also for some people will make them nauseous.
Yeah.
So typically, with a multi, because you have all of that in it, generally going to feel better with food.
Well, I think that was a really good rundown of everything. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me today.
We're going to put the link for the supplements, and we have a code, Blooms10, Blooms10, and they get a special discount if they want to order. And if you want to book an appointment with Jodie, she's really busy, but she may have a little bit of time. For fertility warriors and sisters. So we'll put all her contact information and stuff for Enhance, and Amazon is still where to get the book, or on your website?
Yeah, or you can get it on Enhance as well. So either spot.
So we'll put a link, because I find the book very valuable because I use it all the time. I know I'm usually it's not this one, but I'm usually pulling it open and be like, yes. So
and for your clients that order with that Blooms 10, I put a complimentary book in there for them.
Oh, you do? Okay. I thought that was just for my one girl, because she was just so happy. So I didn't realize that. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much again, Jodie. And we'll get you back after, because you have so much, I didn't even know what to talk about, because I know if I have any questions, I always ask you. And I would love to talk another day just about, say, even thyroid and fertility or whatever. So if we can do that, I would love that. And then
Yeah, I would
about
be
the
happy
show
to.
when the show starts coming up, because
Yeah.
it's like my favorite resource. So thank you so much again, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Great.
Bye,
Sounds good. Thank
everybody.
you so much.
Hey guys, it's Crystal here with Fertility Blooms, and I just had the most amazing interview with Dr. Jodie Peacock. If you have any questions, please reach out to her or myself. I also want to let you know, if you want to order any of the supplements that we talked about today, you can use the discount code BLOOMS10, that's BLOOMS 10, and you'll get a special discount. We're going to put the link below, and it'll be there for you to order whatever you need. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself or Jodie, and we can help you out with that. And if you're not subscribed to our channel, hit the subscribe little bell right now. Ding, ding, ding. I want you to subscribe. And if you haven't had a free coaching consultation with me, hit the link below also, and let's schedule a free session. Talk to you later. Bye.